Alright, we're up to week 4 in contracts. This is the second video that we're making because we looked at a lot of things this week. We're looking at the 3 C's, as I dubbed them this week, which are certainty, completeness, and capacity, which are 3 things that are needed to form the contract. So certainty means that the terms in the contract and the fact that the contract was agreed upon are both certain, sufficiently certain. That's the test. So basically, the idea is if words can hold meaning, the content stands. If not, and it's too uncertain, then there's no contract. Comes under Australian Goldfields versus North Australian Diamonds. So if we kind of use arbitrary, ambiguous terms in a contract, then it can't be deemed as certain. So the idea is, like, if I was to say, hey man, I will sell you a roll of tape, and then you will give me around about $10, right? Because we're using sort of general terms, then it can be deemed uncertain and not a valid contract. To combat this, I can just show you the tape and I can say, this is the tape that I will sell you for $10. That's it, just $10, not around $10, exactly $10. Then that would be certain. There's this idea in contract law called subject to contract, which means that there is an agreement that in the future will be codified by a contract. So the question that arises out of these is, does the original contract still stand? So, you know, if I say I'll sell you this roll of tape for $10, and you say okay, and we both agree to the terms, and then we say yeah, subject to contract, it can mean one of 3 things according to Masters v Cameron. It can either mean, 1, if we both agree to be bound by the terms, and the only thing that we want to do with the contract is codify it, then even if there is no contract made, then the contract will still stand and we'll both still have to go ahead with it. The second one is that if both of us agree to the terms, I'll say the tape, you give me the $10. But we both agree that you're only going to do that once a contract is made, as in we'll only start trading once the contract is made, but we both agree that we will do it, then the agreement is binding and the courts are going to probably force one of us or both of us to write the contract together. Yeah, so performance only happens when a more formal contract is written. So you're not going to buy this thing off me until there's a formal contract. That's what that means. If both of us agree to the terms, but we also agree that there must be a contract before the sale is made, then that's not binding and subject to contract holds weight. So if I say I'll sell you to this as soon as the contract is made, and you'll say yeah, I'll buy it off you as soon as the contract is made, then both of us agree that if a contract is not made, then we don't have to do it. That's sort of what that means. Yeah, so the difference, I hope I explained the difference well. It took me a second to get my head around it, but basically number 2, you know, we can agree to do something, but one or both of us might say, but I'm only going to do it once a contract is made. So we've both agreed, we've both said that we're going to do it, and there's an understanding that we will do it. We're just not going to do it until a contract comes into force. This one here, we're not agreeing to do anything until a contract is made. So we're agreeing to do something when a contract is made, we're not agreeing to do anything until a contract is made. I hope that makes sense. Completeness means that the contract has its essential terms laid out. For example, a sale of property needs a price, location, and the parties involved. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty straightforward. You need to know that I'm selling you a roll of tape. I need to know that you're going to give me $10. We need to agree on a price and a place where we're going to give each other the things, and that makes a contract complete. Property is anything in sales, not just land. I made this mistake in class. My teacher was like, hey, what kind of property can we look at? And I'm like, real estate. And she's like, no. Real estate is real property. Property is just anything at all. Could be a pen, could be this roll of tape. Once again, could be this torch, could be anything. Mechanisms can determine completeness. That's right. So if we don't have a written contract that will say exactly what it is that I'm selling to you or that you're selling to me, then we can offload that to someone else. Booker Industries versus Wilson Parking did this. They made a contract and they had their essential terms laid out and described by an arbitrator of the Queensland Law Society. So you can offload it if you want, provided both the parties agree, yes, we're going to do that. Incomplete contracts are void. So this kind of makes me think about, we were doing consideration. There was one case, maybe hopefully I can find it. No, it doesn't look like I can. where, like for example, if you were to say, hey man, I'm going to do a service for you, and then I say, okay, great, I'll pay you $10. Well, I don't know what service you're going to do for me, so therefore the essential term is not complete, so therefore we don't have a contract. Yeah. So capacity. So yeah, certainty. We know exactly what the terms are. Completeness. All the terms make sense in and of themselves. I guess using Elijah's layman terms, which might not be strictly legally relevant. Capacity. So capacity is the ability to enter into a contract. Now, in criminal law, capacity is just knowing the difference between right and wrong, and you can do that when you're 10 years old. But under common law, contract law, civil law, you have to be able to understand that you are entering into a legal relation. And you can't do that until you're 18, according to this act right here, which we'll touch on in a second. Yeah, so you need the capacity to understand legal relations. Yeah, that's the idea. Generally protected, which means that the contract, like if they start to enter into a contract, they can generally back out of it. Under common law, contracts are unenforceable to minors unless the minor makes a contract out of necessity. So, out of necessity, or if the minor is performing a service that would greatly benefit their career. So those are the two criteria in which, if a child starts to make a contract, then they have to follow through. So Scarborough v. Starzaker, don't know which one it is. We had this kid, 14 years old, however old. He was cycling to and from work every day. And one day his bike broke, so he needed to buy a new bike. So he got the bike, and then the shop owners were like, hey, yeah, pay me. And then he's like, no, I'm not going to pay you. And common law said, well, we can't reverse the transaction because you do need the bike. So because of that, we're going to hold you to that. The test for necessity is whether the contract was capable of being necessary and whether it was necessary for the child at the time. So capable of being necessary under this case, well, the bike was capable because that was his means of transportation. Whether it was necessary for the child at the time, well, if he didn't have another bike or another alternative method of getting around, then it was necessary for him at the time. So that's the test for that one. The other way that it can be enforceable is if the minor is performing a service that would greatly benefit his career. Roberts v. Gray, I forget which one, whose name is who, so I'm going to say Roberts is the kid and Gray is the master. So Gray is a board games champion, I think it's chess, though I'm not too sure. And Gray was going on a tour, right? And Roberts decided, hey, I'm going to be your intern. I'm going to be, I want to learn off you and I want to hopefully develop my own talents as well. So Gray goes, okay, well, we can do that, provided that you are basically my lackey, right? You carry all my stuff around, you are sort of my assistant, my servant, if you will. In exchange for that, then you're going to get a benefit which is greatly beneficial to your career. So because they both agreed to this, and because it was going to benefit the kid so much, the kid was, when the kid tried to back out of the contract, the courts were like, no, this is benefiting you, you have to go through with it. The exception to this rule is if the obligations that are placed on the kid are so high that they manifestly, which means obviously, outweigh the benefits of their career which they would have. So De Francesco v. Bunn demonstrates this. De Francesco was like a ringleader or something like that. He hired this 14-year-old or 13-year-old girl to be his ballerina, and he made just ridiculous terms, right? You have to sleep at this time, you can only eat this food, you can't work for anyone else ever, you're not going to get paid that well, you have to work these ridiculous hours, so on and so forth. And so the girl tried to leave. De Francesco were like, whoa, we don't want to have that happen, and the courts were like, well, actually she can, because the terms that you imposed on her were absolutely brutal and not fair at all. So that's that case. Under statute, the Minors Property and Contracts Act, so again, property and contracts, both civil acts, it sets out the age of capacity to be 18. So minors can't be presumptively bound if they lack legal understanding. So this means that if you have a 7-year-old who tries to make a sale or who tries to buy some land, then they probably couldn't because it's presumed that they lack legal understanding. Civil acts that benefit the minor at the time are presumptively binding. So if someone tries to, like if a 12-year-old kid is absolutely starving, walks into a shop and says, hey, I'd like to buy a meat pie for $6, Because they needed it, it can be deemed that that they would have to go through with it and give the money and do the transaction. Section 20 states that property sales, again, not just real estate, all property, are binding provided they're not manifestly inadequate. So, so we looked at, in consideration, the peppercorn principle, which is that if I have something of value and you have something of value, then we can trade those things, and it's enforceable. So if you've got a Maserati and I've got 10 cents and we both agree, hey, let's trade your Maserati for my 10 cents, that's an official legal contract. But that's not the case for miners. If it's so obviously not fair, if the sale is so obviously not fair, then they can't be held against the miner. And if the provisions aren't met, if these provisions or any other provisions, such as these ones, aren't met, then they are voidable. So the miner can say, hey, I don't want to do that, or they can choose to go ahead with it anyway. The choice is up to them. So that's miners under capacity. People who are mentally handicapped or intoxicated can't accept a contract. So mentally handicapped can include a mental illness like depression. Heart v. O'Connor is a case where a guy was depressed and he sold land to, person A was depressed, sold land to person B, and then person A died, and then person A's son was like, hey, that's not a fair contract because person A was depressed and so I should get the land. And the courts were like, okay, sure. The test for this is that provided provided one party was mentally handicapped or intoxicated, and provided the other party knew that this was the case, then the contract is void, so it can't be enforced. If you agree to a contract, here's an exception to this rule. If you agree to a contract while you're drunk, and then you start to act on it when you're sober, then you can't back off. You're still bound to the agreement. You can't back out of it. Matthews v. Baxter is a case where one of these guys was drunk. A person, again, I can't put names to these, but we'll say Matthews was drunk and Baxter had some land that he was going to sell Matthews. And Baxter goes up to Matthews and says, hey man, do you want to buy some land? And Matthews, while he was drunk, went, yeah, sure. Matthews got sober, started to get all his money together, started to compile it, and then decided, okay, I kind of don't really want to do this anymore. But because he started to act on it, or ratified it, which is the legal term, he's still bound to that contract. So he can't back out of it just because he was drunk, if he started to act on the agreement that he made. Courts distinguish ability to reason and ability to use business sense while drunk, meaning a deal made while drunk can still be enforceable if the ability to reason was intact. I'm not too sure what the statement means, to be honest. It was kind of a confusing thing to have been said. My best guess, though, is that while you're drunk, you would lose either your ability to reason or your business sense. Yeah, it's probably business sense. So when you're drunk, your business sense starts to go out the window, but you still have your ability to reason. And so you can use that ability to reason to make a contract. And if you made a contract with your ability to reason, not your ability to use your business sense, and you still use that even when you're sober, then the contract can be enforceable. I think that's what that means, though I'm not too sure. Anyway, thanks for watching.